somewhere in a land far, far away, there was a factory worker who probably wanted to go home early. We'll talk about if a donor is worth it or not. So a friend of mine, actually bass player in the band I'm in, hey Ed, picked up this Donner guitar kit. That's how he received it, was as a kit. In an auction for like $60. And he had an artist friend paint it, right? Give it like a cool design all over the thing. And then, he asked me if I wanted to put it together and make it work for some video content and stuff. And I said, sure. And this is going to spiral into a multi-video series on the channel. So what we have here is a Donner standard series. I did look online to see if I could find other Donner kits, and I didn't. I'm finding like a bunch of other kits ranging from different price ranges. The closest thing I could find on Amazon was Leo James, or you get let's see here. Yeah, like the Donner like pre-assembled kits. And here's my problem with these kits, and I will say it straight out of the bat. Unless you're getting it at an auction and you're getting it for dirt cheap, heck, I would have bought this for $60 too. Fun project, but unless it's not that kind of scenario, don't buy this stuff. Just save up and like if let's say you really wanted a Telecaster and you don't want to spend a fortune. Save some money, do yourself a favor, save some money, buy one used if you can. Maybe you could find a Mexican-made Fender for cheap. They used to go for about $300 or $400 Canadian back, like before prices went crazy, but you could probably still get them for about $600-700. Or get a Squire. When it starts to get into these off-brands, see, it's really tricky because I don't have a very, how do I put that? Let's put it this way. Chinese-made things, like guitars. We'll just focus in on guitars. There are some factories that pump out really good guitars. And there's a lot of factories that they don't care whether they play, like they're playable or not. They just want to sell units. Right? And so I think you get a different variant of worker. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I'm thinking is factories that don't really care about the end product really. I think the people are working there and there might be a slave labor type deal going on. And then there's other factories that maybe not so much, right? Like where you'd have the Fenders and Squires made in China. Step above what I'm seeing here. And I'll get to why I'm saying this about this particular one. And then you get like, Epiphone in China is doing some pretty good stuff. Like they got probably some of the best Epiphones coming out of there now compared to before. When they first started in China, like the Korean ones were really good, and the new Chinese stuff, they're really good. Then there's like the higher end spectrum of that. When you look at Eastman, those guitars are fantastic guitars, and they're all made in China. So there are luthiers there. They're capable of making, great high end instruments, but a lot of factories just pump out the impulse buy stuff, like some of these Donners here. I don't see a telly here, but let's just like a red Strat Donner DSD 100 39-inch. And that's another tip off. If you're a guitar player and you're looking for a guitar, and if the guitar you're looking at is advertising the the length of the entire instrument. Sounds a lot like a Sears catalog to me. But anyways, this one here is, okay, this is an amp and stuff for 482 CAD. I'm trying to find just the guitar, not a whole kit. But even then, $500 for a Donner guitar, a cheap gig bag, and an amp, some accessories. Spend the $500 on something better. Yeah, and I think some of the Donner stuff, like just the guitar itself, was like $200, $250 Canadian. So cut that in like almost half for the U.S. price. So they're not expensive. They're very inexpensive. So they're attractive to a lot of new players or players who are looking for different things. Like let's say you're looking for a Telecaster, but you don't want to dive in the deep end right away. You want to see if you like the body shape and that sort of thing. But I think when you go into brands like these brands and the Leo James and what else is there, there's a pile others. You're gambling. So if I'm going like this, I'm looking at my screen here. There's a huge gamble. If you get an Epiphone, chances are the fretboard will be radiused correctly, consistently all the way down. The frets might not be like I'm talking Epiphones, even Squires, especially up here, they might not be level, but you got to think they're spending time on a boat to come to North America. So, wood expands and contracts and steel doesn't, not at those temperatures. So, does this, the fret comes out. So that's kind of normal. But aside from that, you can get them set up and knock the frets in and get that leveled out and stuff. When you get to the off-brand stuff, you're gambling with potentially a factory that doesn't give a shit if the guitar is playable in the end. So, which brings us to this. So as far as this goes, the body, I don't think it's basswood because it feels pretty solid. I did look in the neck pocket. It looks like it could be, I don't know if it's poplar because it's not soft enough to be poplar. I think it might be alder. I'm not sure, but it's not plywood. It's not heavy. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's some resonance to it. So my initial thoughts were, okay, cool. This will build pretty good. See if I can back myself up a bit here so I don't have to keep lifting it up so high. So that's cool. So I've got the box with all the parts. I got the pick guard, the pickups, all the electronics, the bridge, all that. And so that's going to be one part of it. The next part will be the neck, which it's like the maple it looks like good maple. From what I could tell, although it's been painted over, it looks like decent kind of rosewood-ish material. It's very dark. So that looks cool. The nut is definitely plastic, but there's nothing like super tall and wonky looking there. The holes are all consistent, like they have a consistent distance. They're all straight. These are installed correctly. Even the logo, like the decal looks good. And then the holes for the tuners, like the screws, they're all straight. They all line up. So they got that there. Another big thing that I always check, especially for tellies, like telly kits or telly bodies, is like for Telecasters specifically, first thing I look at in the pictures is the back side of the body. When it's a through body for the strings, I always look to make sure these are all straight and consistent, spacing and all that. As soon as you see one where it's like a couple of them are closer together or one's off this way or that way, then they're just drilling crooked, and it's a bad deal. This one here, it's hard to tell, but they appear to be well drilled out. They're all straight. And then the corresponding holes here, these 6 holes, they're all straight, they all line up. And then they got the 3 bridge mounting holes. So as far as the body goes, it's good, right? The body looks fine. The neck at a glance looks fine until I started looking at it this way and that way. I tried to get, because I checked the frets with the fret rocker, and there's a bunch of high frets, which I expected. I expected to do a fret level on this because I did talk to Ed and we did discuss things, and we're going to try and make it playable and so it could double as wall art. So it was basically, do you want me to do all this work? And there's more work, and we'll get to that in a sec. All this work to make it playable, or do you want me to just string it up so that it makes a sound but is not playable, but it's wall art? And he left it up to me, so I said, well, let's make a good video out of it. Let's do both. Let's make it a playable piece of wall art. I'm going to put I don't recall the artist's name off the top of my head, but I will put the information down in the description, and I will mention it in future videos. So the neck, I was looking at it, and there's a slight twist. It looked a lot more twisted than it actually is, because the twist isn't actually a twist. There's a slight twist at the headstock, but I think that's fine. The neck will be usable, providing I do this fix. So what we're going to do, and then there's something else on the bottom, but that's minor. So we're going to remove the neck. See if I can put this down a bit. All right, so we'll remove the neck. I'm not really at my working table right now, so we're just kind of doing it like this just to get the angle. So the issue with this neck is actually the fretboard, and it is a fatal flaw. Totally fixable, but if you're buying, let's say you're younger and you wanted a guitar, and you've got some money and you can go on Amazon and you want to buy a Donner. Or let's say you're a parent and you're not really into guitars, so you don't know much, and your child wants to learn to play guitar. Why you should avoid a Donner. You might get a Donner and be fine, but the odds are you're going to get some kind of problem. And the amount of money you're saving by buying said Donner, you're going to have to spend on someone like myself, like a technician or a luthier, to correct it, to even make it playable. So, but if you don't know the difference, you won't know what's entirely wrong with it. And then the person that's learning guitar on it won't know any different, and will have a hard time, and things won't sound right, and they will give up. And we don't want them to give up. We want them to keep playing, because playing music is something that we don't want to let die off, right? So the body is I would say is pretty good. It's not bad. And this one was pre-painted white. So this was like, if this was sold as a kit originally, it would be, you open the box, assemble it, wire it up, and ideally you'd have a playable guitar. Not the case with this one. So this will be one video later on that we'll wire this whole thing up and build out the body. So that'll be that one. But now back to the neck. So the big problem, we'll start with the minor problem, and I started a bit of sanding. You can kind of see the discoloration here. So what I noticed was with a straight edge, so I'll just use my fret rocker here, like this, and I could see light here, which told me that this whole piece here was going like this, right? So that's why you can see there's a sanded spot here and here and here, and it just goes down right in this. This is finish, right? Just a light coat of finish. So what I'll need to do is get a flat piece of like sanding bar, like something like this, right? And sand it until I get a smooth, straight thing. Why is that important? That is important because if it's only contacting the body here but not here, you don't have all the contact there. So you're not getting a perfect joint between the neck and the body. You're not going to get you're not going to get a good resonance transfer. You know, the string vibrates and it's anchored at the bridge and the nut, right? And that energy goes through the neck and the body and meet again. So you want this to be flat. That's not a big issue. You just sand it flat and you're good to go. We're talking like minor measurements. The fatal flaw on this thing is when I looked at it like this, it looks like there's a twist that goes like this. But what it is when they radiused the fretboard, you get like a radius block and sanding it. And this is how I know this wasn't CNC machined or anything, is that it's sanded more here on the high E at the body end and more here on the low E side at the nut end. So we'll see if we can. So look at the thickness of the fretboard here. See if we can focus that. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. Look on the other side. I don't know if you could see that on camera, but in person you could see it. Like I could measure it. Yeah, so about 1/8 and 5/32, something like that. I don't know, whatever. It's thicker here than here, and the same with this one. Although it's hard to tell because there's paint, but visibly, right? But even just running my hand over it like this, I could feel it dip here on this side, and then I could feel it dip on this side. So I don't know if you can kind of see, like it's dipping more here than here, right? And it's dipping more down here. So basically what that means is you can level out the frets and put the neck on, string it up, and over here is going to buzz no matter how high the strings are. It's going to buzz over here, and then your strings are going to be super tall over here, and there's going to be weirdness. It's just not going to be very playable. So here is the plan for this. I'll have to pop out the nut. I'm going to have to pop out all the frets. And then with a radius sanding block, sand it with a focus on the opposite ends, so that ideally we correct the two taller ends down to the lower ends and then get the proper radius. So basically what happened, let's say this here is the radius for the body end, and this here is the radius for the nut end, right? So you want it to be uniform all the way down, right? But the way that they've done it is they've sanded it like this, right? So this is nut end, this is body end. They went like this. So it'll never play right. So that I think that's the main thing. So I don't know if they're all gonna be like this. Maybe this is just an anomaly. Maybe that's why it ended up in an auction as a kit. But I would be less likely to trust any of these Donners. So my opinion is spend the extra money and get something with a reputable brand. Not that Donner isn't a reputable brand, but this here's a pretty fatal flaw. Like, I mean, it is fixable, but the market that these are aimed at don't have the ability, the know-how, or the experience to do this work, right? And they're not worth going to a luthier to get that corrected, because you're going to pay more just for the re-radiusing and the refret than you did for the guitar by far. So that's my input for today is steer clear of these. If if you really want one of these, save up, get a Fender, get a Squire. As soon as you go into the off brands, you're asking for trouble. You're risking some major problems, and also a lot of the times their sizing aren't standard sizing to other parts, so you want to try and upgrade it, and half the time shit doesn't fit. So on this kit, we are going to do the neck work and make it so that the neck can actually set up and play. So that means re-radiusing the fretboard so that it doesn't dip on sides. It's uniform all the way down. From there, we can reinstall the nut, or maybe even put a bone nut. We'll see what we have here. And then reinstall the frets or install new frets. The artwork is going to go away, but he said the artist, you can always get the artist to repaint. And then we'll make it playable, just to show like how much work it's going to take just to make a Donner play. The body looks decent. So if they ever sold bodies, like, this is the part that's impressive to me is they do a fretboard radius job like this, but these are perfectly straight. These are perfectly straight. So what that tells me is that they're using CNC to make and drill out their bodies, and they're using probably this by hand to radius this stuff. And they were just a little too heavy on this side and a little too heavy on this side. That's probably all it was. But I'd be curious to see other examples of Donners to see if they have similar issues, or maybe this is just a one-off. But to me, it's just not worth the risk if you're looking to spend the full dollar amount. As an auction for $60, yeah, sure, because you could, worst case, you could just throw this neck out, buy a neck from a reputable source like All Parts or Warmouth, or here in Canada we have Solo Music sells necks. There's a few builders too, I think, here that make necks. I can't remember their names, but regardless, you can get a neck and the body would be decent. That's all I'm saying. So that's it. A little bonus episode just to kind of launch the Donner project. And we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it goes off without a hitch. Hopefully I can correct this fretboard radius. I do have a fret press, so the refret should be no problem. Level them off, crown them up, and then the body will be a piece of cake. And then we'll do a video putting it all together, string it up, setting it up, and playing it. That should be fun. I know that the previous video I was very much about not wanting to do gear so much, and this is for the people who are considering a Donner. There are times where you have to buy gear, you have to buy a guitar or whatever, and just save a little more. Put your money somewhere where it's a better known brand, less of an off brand. You get better resale out of that too if ever you want to move on to a different, because like I'm a gear nut just like anybody else. So I'm buying, selling stuff all the time, and in order to buy that, I need to sell this, and so I get it. You're not going to get a lot of resale out of this. If anything, it'll probably just sit on Marketplace and it won't move. Or you'll have to lose a shit ton of cash. Well, shit ton of cash. You'll have to lose most of what you paid for it. So that's it. Project Donner. We'll get started probably next week. Have a good weekend.